Over to you, Felipe.
Hey, Andrew, thank you. And actually, like, there's a very good point of departure, right? We just had a pretty fantastic conversation about the implications and changes to marketing, whether from the creative agencies and how they are going to produce new content and how they're going to manage new content, to all sorts of consequences that can come up to our practice. And with that, then comes questions about, is our marketing body, our marketing organization prepared to deal with those shocks and changes? So we're going to dive into a bit of a discussion on that and how to get our companies ready and prepared, and the marketing function within those prepared to deal to those. So today I'm going to be joined by two friends and colleagues. First and foremost, Greg Stuart from MMA. You're seeing the MMA in the list of partners, the Mobile Marketing Association. Greg is CEO of MMA, and he oversees this body, which obviously has a huge convening power around marketing leadership and corporate leadership altogether. And we're also joined by Neil Morgan, who's a PetSmart Distinguished Professor of Marketing from the University of Indiana, a longstanding, long-term friend of mine as well. And we spent several years actually discussing this ongoing project that has just led to new publications and so on, and some novel thinking around designing the organization itself to handle these environments. So I'll start off by turning it over to Greg and then Neil.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Felipe. And Andrew, thank you for the opportunity to share some of this. We think this could be really helpful, especially as we try to adjust to new things, just as was sort of evidence in sort of that previous presentation. So thanks for that. So I am Greg Stuart. I'm the CEO of the MMA Global. As we refer to ourselves, we are a nonprofit trade association representing CMOs and trying to effectively sort of jumpstart them into the future. So we deal with a lot of issues around data, around marketing measurement, and in particular around this particular one on marketing org. And as you're going to see here, this is the culmination of what has been a 3-year journey now, led by Omar Rodriguez and Neil and other members of the team, to really rethink about marketing org design for the future. And could we create measurement and other dynamics around those systems to sort of help marketers and CMOs make better decisions? This all came out of a project with Coca-Cola, who had done about a $500,000 research study with us 4 years ago. And they came back and after a year realized that they had done nothing with that research, and basically said, and I hope Coke's not on the phone, said, wow, we suck. We're not sure exactly how we could get this so wrong, and we couldn't adopt to new measurement techniques, but we've done. Can you go, Greg, can you take leadership in the industry and go help us rethink our design that's standing in the way of doing this? And that's when we got in touch with Omar Rodriguez, who'd been at Coca-Cola and had, like I said, been a journey of this. And this has really been an effort. I mean, listen, I want to give all credit to Neil and Omar and the rest of the team. They did the work, so just to be clear, but we gave as much both administrative and strategic support as we could to really help come this to the forefront. And I think what you're going to see today is a pretty dynamic, interesting sort of approach to really rethinking orgs, so that decisions are not made, and I'll close with this, that decisions around market org are not made based on politics, but are based on company performance. So with that, Neil, I turn it over to you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Hey, everyone. So I'm part of the team, 3 academics, 2 real people. The MMA provided us kind of support, access to a whole bunch of CMOs and companies. And what you're about to see was kind of driven by a steering committee with at least 10 CMOs on it at any one point in time. So what you're about to see has been through multiple rounds and kind of pressure tested, and we think we've got to a spot where we're kind of ready to share. And so this is kind of one of those opportunities to share the work. So this was originally called the kind of the Mars project, and we actually trademarked the term. And really we were looking at what's changed and how have marketing organizations responded to that, and what still needs to be done. So I'm going to talk about Mars a little bit, and you know, we use the acronym for all sorts of different things, but you can think about, you know, mobile and AI and analytics, real time and social and sustainability stuff, and social, both in terms of media, but also in terms of, Black Lives Matter, social environment, all of that's layering in on top of these kind of how organizations have been introduced to the digital world over the last 10 years. And so this is a real deep dive. So it's taken 3 years to get to this point. Hundreds of companies, hundreds of interviews, lots of different types of companies, lots of different types of mainly C-level, but also we've done deeper dive in organizations as well. And chief digital officers, chief growth officers, mainly CMOs, and some subject kind of matter experts as we've gone through. And it was also important to us that we kind of talk to not just kind of what we would call legacy companies or existing companies that have been around for a while, but also digital natives. And so there's a bunch of digital natives that are kind of in this data set as well. So what's changed? 3 big buckets, we think, over the last 10 years. Number one, customer expectations have changed dramatically. What's possible, what technology enables, has changed what customers expect from you. And interestingly, not just within industries, but also across. Right? I mean, everybody wants to know why, if Amazon can deliver something in 24 hours, you can't, even if you're a B2B chemicals manufacturer, right? So customer expectations changing fairly dramatically over the last 10 years. Lowering of entry barriers, right? New forms of competition, new competitors coming from places and with technologies that you kind of never heard of, and dramatically changing requirements and expectations of what marketing is and should be and has to do in this kind of an environment. It needs to be more agile, needs to be more accountable, needs to be more kind of performance driven, but also much more interdependent than it's ever been before in terms of both inside of the organization and kind of outside of the organization, ecosystem, vendors, those kinds of things. Right? And so our first question was kind of in what ways and how well are marketing organizations adapting to this kind of brave new world? And the kind of the 3 things that we kind of figured out as we're going through this process. Number one is almost with each new piece of technology that people think may have some legs, you create a new piece of the marketing organization. Someone's responsible for it. There's a performance team, there's a content team, there's a social team, there may even be a Twitter team. So each new piece of technology that comes along, we really accelerated the creation of kind of new functions within marketing, if you want to think about it that way. And to the extent that there have been transformation efforts, and transformations, a word I'm learning to hate. Everybody's on digital transformations or marketing transformations of one form or another. A lot of these efforts are about trying to move what we kind of depicted as from-to, going from the old world to the new world. And East Coast to West Coast is one way, or brand to performance marketing, right? Kind of from to thing, and not really so much about how do you blend what we did before with what the new technologies and the new expectations enable, right? And the third piece of it is partly as a result of this, very often the kind of transformation efforts have been focused on individual activities, teams on individual activities, or teams on individual pieces of technology, very often without a really a clear kind of big picture of how this stuff kind of fits together and kind of what the destination may look like. Right? And so when we kind of just asked CMOs kind of what's it like, what's it like in the marketing organization now with all this stuff going on, and there were clearly there are a lot of tensions, right? I think people are not happy. Things are changing. It's not that there's no activity, but people are not necessarily happy with where they've gotten to. And so all sorts of common things, I thought I knew my role. Technology keeps the tech people keep creeping in. The tech people keep trying to take over marketing. We got lots and lots of data. I'm not entirely sure what to do with it in terms of insight. There's people, MarTech vendors knocking on my door every day. How do I decide which pieces of this that are useful for my business and which ones are not? And even if I decide which ones may be useful, does that mean I have to create a team and do it inside my organization, or is this something I can outsource or use a vendor for? Right? And one of the lines I liked a lot was, we talk about transformation. What we're really doing is adding everything new thing that comes along. We add a new, almost like a new little technical silo for the new piece of technology that comes along, and we just add that into the marketing organization. We're really good at adding. We're not so good at changing. Right? And so kind of the first charge from the MMA folks was, well, yes, that sounds like the real world of the CMO, and what we describe as kind of the fog of marketing, and clearly it's important, right? Because people, 80, and we've done a couple of surveys. There are other surveys that have been done, but even in digital natives, the numbers are not very different, right? And so 8 out of 10 CMOs not happy with the way their marketing organization is running, right? Just operating effectiveness of their marketing organization. And so when we brought this back, kind of the first question clearly from the MMA folks was, well, you've given us, that sounds like what the real world looks like. You've given us a bunch of symptoms. What's the root cause here? And so we kind of did some more work, and it seems to us, or it became clear to us reasonably early on, trying to transform your marketing organization without a clear idea of what you want the outcome to look like, and a map for how to get there, and some way of being able to calibrate, measure where you're starting from and where you are at various points on the journey. If you don't have those things, then marketing transformation efforts, you're always going to be in this world of adding and not changing, right? And so then the charge to us from the MMA was, okay, that root cause sounds about right. Kind of what do we do about it? Operationally, I mean, the CMOs want they're kind of interested in academic stuff, but really they want practical stuff, right? What do we do? And so what we kind of designed is an architecture and a process for taking people kind of step by step through figuring out how to what they want the destination to look like, figuring out a map for how to get there, and figuring out a way to calibrate where they're starting from and where they are in the journey along the way. And so our first kind of point of departure is most marketing transformation efforts are built around pieces of technology or activities. What's really expected and what's really required is that marketing organizations have to think about, how do we use all of this new technology? How do we use all of these things to be able to create new ways to grow? Because that's really what the expectation from the CEO is increasingly for marketing organizations. It's about growth. Well, how are you going to configure these things in a way that you can drive new sources of growth? And so we've developed a framework for helping CMOs and executive leadership teams in organizations think about what is the value that marketing can bring. How can marketing create value that is particularly enabled by the new technologies? How can we deliver new ways of creating value for customers, and how can we create new ways of delivering value to the firm? And so what we developed is kind of a model, a framework for helping people think through this, how to make choices and think through what the options might be. And so in terms of customer value, we think in addition to what marketing is already doing, in addition to the kind of the value that marketing is already creating, it seems to us there are kind of 3 big buckets or categories of ways in which the technology can be used to create new forms of customer value that can lead to growth. And so number 1 talks about kind of exchange value, which is about figuring out very early on when someone is looking for or to solve a problem, what types of products or services might be most aligned with what it is they're trying to do, and to figure out ways to get to both contextual messaging and pricing and value offerings that are the best match for those things, using predictive analytics early in the process. Right? And the second kind of big bucket is about experience value. And you can think about experience value as not just kind of having an end-to-end view of the customer journey and figuring out where the pain points are and figuring out ways to reduce those kinds of frictions, but also trying to figure out ways in which you can actually make it a more enjoyable journey, right? So not just taking away frictions, but also adding some enjoyment as you go through the journey map. And the third piece talks about the role of marketing in being able to create engagement value for customers. And when we talk about engagement value, what we're talking about is some very practical things like enabling customers to talk to each other, creating communities of customers so they can help figure out better ways to use the products or services you deliver. Incredible source of growth, by the way, for Salesforce. I mean, trailblazer marketing is kind of what they call it. And that's basically a user community that helps each other get the most value out of Salesforce products. But also creating enough trust between the customers and the organization that they're prepared to share those things with you so that you can look at how they use your products, figure out, and test stuff with the community before you create new products. And so there's also a kind of a meaning piece to this, which is not just about kind of the functional benefits of the product or the service, but also the feeling among customers that you share their values, right? That your organization stands for things that they believe in, social causes, environmental causes, those kinds of things. So there are three kind of new ways we think that the technology is enabling you to create value above and beyond kind of the old ways. And I'll never forget, the CMO said to me, Neil, I know that more of everything is not a strategy, but I don't know what the options are anymore for making choices, because the old models kind of don't work in the new world. And so we showed him kind of an earlier version of this, which was kind of you can't do everything, you have to make choices. And so you can pick amongst these different value creation areas for your marketing organization in terms of creating value for customers. And there are different kind of configurations that maybe seem to hang together. And the CMO said, Neil, those are the new set of options. Now I can take this back and we can make a choice, because now I know what the options look like, which was kind of one of the better days of my life for the last couple of years. And so that's the external facing. Then there's the internal facing stuff, which is about not just how do we create new value for customers, but how we create new value for the firm. So you can think about kind of three big buckets here. Strategic value, which is about figuring out new ways to drive growth, creating new platforms, branded platforms, taking our brands across categories. Revenue streaming, taking things we already do and figuring out as a marketing organization and figuring out, can we make some money out of doing those as a result of that. And marketing model innovation, thinking about things like Amazon. Amazon's built itself from kind of scratch, a $15 billion advertising industry business, right? Just as a result of things that are part of kind of doing its business. So new ways of kind of creating strategic value, new sources of revenue for the organization. Operating value talks about how do we facilitate or how do we create linkages that enable, because the organization is much more cross-functional than ever before. How do we create ways where people can coordinate at the scale and the speed with the quality that we need in order to be able to efficiently deliver on the things that we're trying to deliver. Huge problem in most marketing organizations. I mean, the more we work with marketing organizations on this stuff, the opportunities and the problems and the opportunities for creating enhanced operating value are huge. And the third big bucket talks about knowledge value, and knowledge value not just in a traditional kind of an insights, figuring out market research kind of sense, but also not just thinking about the marketing organization as a user of data, of marketplace data, but also a generator. And so, one of the lines that I've used is, if data is the new oil, then why is the marketing organization not drilling? Why are we buying oil from others rather than looking for creating new data kind of for ourselves, right? And so
I think you're going to get to, I was going to ask you a question on that.
Yeah.
And I think you're moving right to it too as well, because I think the shift in moving from status quo to new status quo, and that's the process, and learning to be a company that's more adaptive seems rather important, but that pushes against this idea that's not just the assets that you're playing with too, but some capabilities come in play. And
this is a capability-driven model. It's about, and the reason you try and figure out what you want your marketing value proposition to be, both for customers and inside the firm, is because when you make that choice, that will tell you what capabilities you need in order to be able to deliver on that choice. Right? So all of that work is just about enabling you to make the choice. Making a choice is one thing, figuring out how to execute it, whole different ballgame. And the execution is around what capabilities do I have and what capabilities do I need to be able to be good at in order to deliver on that marketing value proposition choice. So we built out a kind of a library of 72 specific underlying capabilities that drive these different components. So depending on kind of what you want to major in and minor in these value components, then we can tell you which are the most important capabilities that you need to have and to build and to strengthen in order to be able to deliver effectively on that. And that's really where the kind of the measurement piece, I'll forget that. That's where the measurement piece of this comes in. Right? And so if you've got a marketing value proposition, you've got an idea of what you want this to look like at the end, the next question is kind of where are you starting from, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where as Greg said, that's where the measurement piece becomes really, really important, right? And so what we've developed is a way of being able to calibrate using using survey instruments and depending on the size of the organization, either the entire marketing organization or samples of their population, that are about how well understood is the mission of the marketing organization, what we're trying to achieve across the marketing organization. Number two, does the marketing organization actually own or have significant input into the activities necessary in order to successfully deliver on that mission? And then the third one is, how well do you do the things that you need to do in order to be successful, given the marketing value proposition that you've selected and the translation of that into the marketing mission, right? So we've developed a kind of a set of tools, and we've tested this. We're probably up to, well, we got a benchmark data set where we got some 400 organizations. We've done deep dives on this. We're probably up to, I don't know, 15 organizations that we've done the real deep dive stuff on this going forwards, right? And so what we can create is kind of a fit map, if you want to think about it that way, right? And so the fit map says, here are the things, here's what you need to be good at and how good you need to be at these things in order to deliver on your marketing value proposition. And here's where you are. Here's where you're starting from, right? And so this is kind of a version of the fit metrics that we're able to provide using some of these measurement tools that we've got. And we don't have, we haven't been doing this long enough to be able to show you absolute growth numbers, but what we can show you is that there's a very strong correlation between the fit on the capabilities alignment with your marketing value proposition and how happy your CEO is and your CMO are with the growth of the organization, right? Yeah. Perceptual measures, but and now the argument is, now you're in a position, you know where you want to get to, you know where you're starting from. Now you can design a very targeted kind of a change program, right? Because you can't work on everything and do everything on day one. So I know we're going to run out of time, but I'll just, if folks want to read more about this stuff, the current issue of the Harvard Business Review has a write-up of this kind of approach to thinking about this stuff. And if you're interested, and you can, I think this is also in the HBR, but if you're interested, you can go and look at a kind of a light version of some of these benchmarking assessment tools that's kind of available there for the folks who are in the audience who are interested in starting to, or getting a closer look at how this kind of stuff works. Right? So I'll stop there and I'll let you ask questions or not, depending on what time allows.
Yeah, so like I'll do just, I think we have a couple questions and time for a little bit of each. The first one that came from our attendees, there's from Andrew Thomaz, I believe it was, the name kind of passed by quickly now, but it's a question that will speak actually more directly to some of this research where you and I started actually in the finance kind of interface. Yep. Which is then, okay, yeah, we're talking about this reorganization, but how does that connect to financial value creation for the firm? So where does that fit in?
So what Felipe and I will be able to tell you is there's about 20 years worth of evidence, and I'm responsible for a bunch of it, and Felipe's done some of it too. And we're happy to share the studies, but that show a very clear connection between firms' marketing capabilities and their financial performance using financial market and accounting metrics. Right? So the jury's kind of not out on that one. That's clear. What's changed is that the marketing capabilities you need to have radically changed in the last 10 or 15 years, right? So a lot of the data that we have is based on, if you want to think about it, the old model of marketing and the original types of marketing capabilities. We don't have the same data sets yet because they haven't been around long enough for us to look at the time lags to be able to show this. But I'm based on what we're seeing, I'm very confident that we're going to be able to, and it's part of why we're building the benchmarking database, is so that we can actually do those, over time kind of studies with financial metrics.
And just one final question, so I don't abuse the time we have with everybody. So it's a distinction then between the outcomes then that the firm is trying to achieve versus its internal processes and the activities he needs to kind of pay attention to get to those outcomes. Right. So is it a bit of a trap potentially to focus on your internal processes and what you do and just like that inner working, and not so much into those outcomes. And the outcomes should then be the primary drivers and determinants of your strategy, and not the other way around.
Right. And so that's but from a marketing perspective, that's why we start with the value creation for customers, value creation for the firm. That drives the choice of the strategy. The choice of the strategy then drives what capabilities you need to build in order to be able to execute that strategy at the scale and the speed and with the quality and the efficiency that you need in order to drive the financials, which is ultimately where this all ends up, right?
Yeah, starts from value.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate the time. And Andrew, back over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for that session. Much appreciated. So what we're going to do now, actually, everybody, is give you time to stretch your legs, take a quick break. So we're going to be back soon. We'll have about 6 minutes, I think. And there'll be a timer on your screen so you'll know how much time you've got. So we'll see you in just under 6 minutes.